Hey guys, Walt Wagner here with TAV. Today's been a long time coming with this truck. It's been probably about 3 years in the making since we first started talking with this client on what we were going to do with his build and what he wanted to see out of it. Lots happened in the country in the past few years, so it's with certain delays and things like that, we are finally able to put this one on the ground and get her operating right and looking beautiful. This thing is a solid truck. He had already had some of this stuff done before he brought it to us, and you know, mostly like his camping scenario on the bed. So I won't go into too much detail on that because it's that, you know, with some of the stuff that he's got on there, I know what we have, but I don't know how he's got it all set up in great detail. But what we knew we needed to do in regards to suspension, powertrain, drivetrain, and things like that to support what he wanted to have on the bed, it helped that he already had that stuff there when it came to us. So we were able to just remove all of that and have a really good idea of what kind of weight this truck was going to see. And that's what we implement into the design of the leaf springs, the shock valving, and the desired performance out of all of that stuff. So with this particular truck, it's a 2021 TRD Pro Tundra, and it has, obviously it has the 5.7 V8 in it. And this is what we consider to be our stage 3 setup. Now, a stage 3 is all-inclusive when it comes to powertrain, you know, power management, suspension components, and drivetrain. So that would be your gears and lockers and things like that. So starting from the front, we'll be working on you know, body armor, kind of what's on the top of the truck first. So we're going to you can kind of mentally total up what you can expect for weight on for what this truck sees, starting from the top down, and then we'll go into the suspension components themselves and what their job is to do for this truck. So from the top, he's running a Prince U Designs roof rack, and he has some cases that he'll put up there, but I'm not sure what he carries in the cases, but that's one thing that obviously you can see they're not there. So if he loads the cases down and puts it on the roof, that's going to add weight on top of the roof. But if he runs it slick, then it's going to save some weight. So knowing that we were going to have a certain amount of weight up there, that, you know, that just like there's a general number we can plug in when we do this. But then kind of moving down onto the roof rack itself, he had some lights, Heretic Designs Studios lights in place, and we kind of added to that with some Baja Designs S2s. And these are in like a work scene, S2 Sport, a work scene pattern. And that's more of like a really wide, kind of a diffused beam pattern, and really handy at camp. So we've got those on the sides, you know, 2 of those on each side of the roof rack. And kind of moving back just a little bit, he's got his iCamper tent mounted to a Leitner Designs forged rack, and some, you know, the Leitner Designs cargo boxes and things like that he carries all his gear in. So you can kind of see there's a fair amount of weight back there. It's, even though the storage is there, doesn't mean it's always full. So it can be a fairly lightweight truck, you know, considering a 270 awning and then the tent. So below that, for weight, he's also running a deck system that he had put in himself. And that's kind of the heaviest amount of weight, and that's all weight that lives on the truck. So when we go into the suspension components, we know weight that's going to stay on the truck, like bumpers, sliders, and gear and stuff in the bed. That helps us know what we need to do to balance the vehicle on its suspension. So kind of speaking to the weight that lives on the truck, up front is the CBI Baja series bumper, I believe, with the full bull bars. And this is it's a nice clean bumper. We haven't done one quite like this with the bull bars, the full bull bars with fiberglass fenders, but it ties in really nice. And the fenders kind of make the bull bar itself look a little bit smaller because the fenders are wider than the corner bars that cover the headlights. He did want headlight protection on this, and he did want some high power lighting as well to see long distance, so you could see elk and things like that, you know, plenty of time in advance before hitting them. But for lighting on that, we are running the Baja Designs LP9 Pro. We have 2 of them in amber and we have 2 of them in white, and they are all the driving combo beam pattern. And that's kind of a go-to a go-to light pattern, or you know, for us. We can go 2 amber, 2 white. You can run them all if you want, but there are times where amber is a better suited light, you know, at night for, or even during the day. If you're in a convoy and it's dusty, and you have, say, the ambers on low power, people can see you, you know, real easy. Approaching traffic can see you in the dust really well with an amber light. For fog light replacements, we wanted to put a functional fog light in there where you can actually kind of see down the road more without having it too overwhelming on oncoming traffic. So we are running the Squadron Pro, and that's a Squadron Pro is a 4 diode light that goes right in the factory fog light location, and it's in a driving combo as well. And that's hooked up to the factory fog light switch. All right, for recovery on the truck, we are running the Come Up 12.5 RS Slim. So that's the synthetic line. That's the 12.5, 12,500 pound winch. That's physically the same size as the 9.5, so we tend to run the 12.5 on pretty much every truck anymore. But it's been a great winch for us. We love these things. And that hook, the red hook that's on it, is one that is supplied with the winch when you get it. It's just a killer. It's a killer setup. It is a wireless winch, and we've got it set up to where we're not using a light bar in the bumper like people typically do. We left the light bar mount clear of anything, so you can look straight in and see your drum, your winch drum. I like to be able to see the winch drum if you have a winch in there. If you do need to operate it, you can see if there's anything going on that gets maybe sucked up a stick or something gets taken into the winch, and if you've got a knot or something goes on, you can actually see it. You know, you can see it building up on one side or the other, and actually effectively use your winch. With the wireless remote, it's very, very handy, but then you also have a corded remote, and we tend to move those out of the way. We put this one out on the corner. It's not on the very edge of the corner, so it's still kind of towards the front of the bumper, but it's off to the side to where if he did want to run that, he can just plug it in there, run the wire around the bull bar one time, and then up to his ditch light bracket, and then into the passenger compartment, and be able to move down the trail with the winch controller in the window if he needed to. So another component to the winch that we like to use, and it's super clean, is this is normally down on the winch itself on the control box, but since we hide the control box away, up on top of the grill, we can remove the button, the power button, and we can put that on top. So this, since it's Bluetooth and you want to use your wireless remote, you can just hit your switch. You can see a little LED light come on, and you can hear the winch beeping. When you learn your remote to it, you press and hold the power button, that tone will go steady, and then it's linked together. But to kill the power to that, you just hit that button. So it's kind of out of the way. It's not on the control box anymore, and you can kind of get to it really easily.
Go for it.
The other end of the Switch Pros is the SDHQ mount that allows you to mount the Switch Pros switch panel right in front of the armrest. So it's right down at your fingertips, and I really like that location for switches in the Tundras. It's just a really good place to have everything, and you can reach down and you can, if you know what is on each switch, you don't even have to look down. You can just reach down and feel it and hit the button that you need. As far as powering the LP9s that are on the front bumper, the LP9s are a high and a low power, so you have a 3-position switch, and you can't run that off of the Switch Pros the same way. So we get the harness from Baja Designs, and we use their switches, and it's a nice positive click when you're in the position. So right now, the LP9 switches are off, so they're in the middle upright position. Usually we go high power is forward and low power is rear, and that is also right at your fingertips. Right, so if you're driving at night and you have your high power on, I usually just drive with my hand right on the switches, and if somebody's coming, I can disengage the light as quickly as possible and not blind anybody. So we try to keep all of the light switches as close together as we can, and the Tundra's just got a really great layout for that right behind the cup holder. All right, and for the rear bumper, this is a dual swing out rear bumper that we use from Expedition 1. And I've been a big fan of these bumpers. I like their looks, I like their functionality. It's a nice finished looking product. You can kind of set up the swing outs any way you want. The driver's side swing out, we have set up it's open, so he can kind of do whatever he wants to there. He can put fuel cans, a race jack, whatever he wants to on that. And you can open that with the passenger side closed with the 37-inch tire on it. So you can open and close that driver's side if you wanted to. Right behind the tire, so on here is a 37-inch tire, and you can kind of see that we've got it center line kind of closer to the tailgate latch, and that's to not block your tail light. So if you're following down the road, you can see his tail light and turn signals perfectly. So we've got the camera relocation right there, just above the license plate, the factory camera from the tailgate down onto the bumper. And that makes it so you can see underneath the tire, and you can actually see down over your receiver hitch. If you have a hitch in and you're going to back up to a trailer or something, you can see that real easily. In the bumper, we're running a Squadron Sport rear light. That's hooked up to its own switch, and that's just like a working backup rear light. The reverse lights work like normal in the factory taillights position, but these are more of an auxiliary light for backing up. Or a chase light. If you wanted to use like an amber or something that's easy to see, you can use that as a chase light. He actually has a chase light on this roof rack we didn't mention before. It's the S2 ambers up in the forward portion of the bed on the roof rack. You probably might be asking yourself, well, why would he have it inside his roof rack? But if you're a car behind this vehicle, you can see those things will be looking straight at you, and you will not miss those ambers shining back at you. So they're in a nice concealed spot that's actually still functional. For rocker protection on this, he's running the CBI sliders, and these particular sliders, they fit close to the truck, but they're flat, and they have a dimpled plate on them, so those dimples are facing up for traction. It's very effective, and you can stand on the side of this and reach things on the roof rack with the door open or closed. But it's a nice platform to stand on, and it's a functional slider. You know, it'll protect the rocker panel of your truck and help you pivot around a rock or a tree or something like that. In the engine compartment here, you're going to see a couple different things. We're on the passenger side, we relocated his air compressor. He has an ARB dual compressor, so we relocated that towards the back with the SDHQ mount, and it also relocated the washer bottle. Kind of pushes it back close to the firewall there, but that allows enough room for the dual battery. We're running a SDHQ dual battery setup, and this is a full throttle battery, and we have a main battery disconnect because we're also running the Red Arc BCDC battery splitter, and it helps us manage all of our electrical and keep everything really nice and labeled and correct. And if there's ever an issue with anything, all of the heat shrunk labels that we put on telling the client what lead goes where and things like that, if any other shop needed to look at it, they could. Some things that we do ourselves, like we'll make the mount for the battery cutoff, because there's several different battery switches that you can use. This is one that we're using for this particular project, so we made an ABS mount on top of the off-grid battery tie down. And then part of the stage 3 powertrain edition is the Magnuson supercharger. This thing is so nice to have. We've run these on so many different vehicles, and in our personal company Tundra we had a couple years ago, we had one of those in there, and it was our most fuel efficient truck that we've had to date. And we were getting roughly around 16 miles per gallon on a 37-inch tire with 529 gears and that supercharger, and it has been doing great for us. So we've been a big fan of the Magnusons so far. For switch management, this client has the Switch Pros, and we were adding a lot of components to it, like a lot of roof lights and things like that. So we have distribution blocks throughout, we have fuses throughout, but we try to keep everything together as close as possible. So we have the Switch Pros and another fuse panel up, the Blue Sea fuse block up on top with a breaker of the factory fuse box and relay box. So you can take that lid and just push it back if you needed to get into the OEM fuse box, but everything is in one location. Everything is labeled and easy to deal with. So part of our stage 3 suspension setup, as I mentioned before, the stage 3 package in itself is all encompassing: powertrain, drivetrain, and suspension. But for suspension on this truck, we're running something we don't typically run, but there's a lot of tunable components up here. So for shocks and coilovers, we're running King. Custom spring rate for the weight that this truck's going to carry, but also custom valving in the coilover itself, which has a high-speed compression adjuster that you can just manually turn the knob of, and it increases or decreases your resistance in your high-speed compression. So that's very effective if your road conditions change and you're hitting some natural terrain and you're hitting maybe some G-outs, or you come off the ground a little bit and your suspension collects very quickly. That's your high speed, and that creates more resistance, so you're not going to slam through your suspension stroke quite as easily. Part of what helps that too is the shock that's behind that coilover, and that's a triple bypass shock. Now the bypass tubes, there are 2 compression bypass tubes and there is 1 rebound bypass tube. You can create more or less resistance inside that bypass as well when you are collecting from full extension to full compression. That resistance can change as it compresses when you do adjust those, and that's also with rebound. So there's a lot of tuning capability in the front of these trucks, and some of our clients want that capability, want that kind of tuning capability for that. So it is very effective, and it just really translates to an amazing ride off-road. Even if you're not going extremely fast, you don't have to be like pre-running Baja or anything with this setup. You can have it work on pavement too. It depends on just what your driving conditions are like. For control arms, we run the Total Chaos upper and lower chromoly control arms. Their lowers are fully boxed, and your track width is now increased to 2.5 inches wider per side. So now your control arms are longer and they're moving in a larger radius, which gives you much more suspension travel than a stock vehicle and the stock limitations of your factory upper and lower control arms and ball joints and things like that. All of that stuff is replaced in this system. For the rear suspension of this stage 3, you can see the leaf spring pack that we use. We get made every time by Alcan spring, and the spring rate that we use is a progressive rate spring, but it is also there to support what this truck has to carry. And it also allows us just enough compression to where we can gain compression travel. Tundras are known to have very little compression travel from the factory, but we get rid of the overload spring, and the new spring rate carries the truck a little taller, so we can get more compression travel from ride height, and we get a great deal of droop extension travel from ride height as well. And we're running a 12-inch stroke King shock on the rear of this with a high-speed compression adjuster, and it is just a really nice setup back here. We don't run bypass tubes, external bypass tubes on these shocks anymore in the rear, because bypass tubes can make noise, and we've just noticed that it can be noisier on the rear of the truck than it is in the front of the truck, and you hear that in the cab. And sometimes people don't mind it. It's just a performance aspect that you have bypass tubes, you can tune them. But in our style of building with an Expedition platform, we found that you can run an internal bypass, which is quiet, and then you can run the compression adjuster, the high-speed compression adjuster on the remote reservoir, and you have all the tuning that you could really want in a setup like this. We also use the Total Chaos shock relocation kit. So we are putting the shock on the rear of the axle on both sides of the truck to where it matches, but we can also get the right amount of stroke out of that shock on the back. And we can rotate our shock mount, lower shock mount on the axle back and out of the way more so than the factory shock mount. It's a much stronger shock mount as well. So that gets welded to the axle. Gearing, the drivetrain that goes with a stage 3 in this truck is a 529 Nitro gear, because we are running a 37-inch tire, but we're also running the Eaton electric lockers front and rear on this truck. With the Tundras, we've been really liking these lockers because they are electric. They are just push button, and they've been really tried and true for us on all these builds that we're doing. You don't have an airline, you don't have those little O-rings inside an air locker that can go bad over time. If there's an issue with it not working, it's easy to diagnose. It's easy to change a fuse or something like that. But it's been a very nice locker for us to have. We haven't had any issues with those yet. For another aspect of the Stage 3 is the fuel capacity. So this truck, we went away with the stock tank, and we were actually running a transfer flow. I think it's about 46 gallons of gas on this truck, and it sits nice and tight, high up and out of the way. It doesn't hang down any lower than the stock tank. They just really fill in any available space in the frame for these trucks, and it's a lot of fuel, and it's nice to have in these. And for wheels and tires on this Stage 3, we're running the Method Race Wheels 703, and that is has their bead grip technology. So it's got these grooves inside the wheel. You can't see it with the tire on there, but there are grooves that are a part of the inner and outer bead of the wheel. And once you mount a tire on it and the tire bead pops into place onto those grooves, it is very hard to debead a tire when you're off-road. You can run extremely low pressures and side load that tire very aggressively, and you're not going to lose the bead. If you get some sand or something wedged in there, you can maybe get some air leakage out of it, but you're not likely to lose the bead and pop the bead off of the wheel. That's what makes them so good, because they're very, very lightweight wheels, but they're very strong when it comes to their bead retention and their load capabilities on the wheel itself. For a tire, we're running the Toyo Tires Open Country Mud Terrain, and it's in a 37 12.5 by 17, so it's a 17 by 8.5 inch wheel, and we tend to run a 12.5 inch tire on that. That's one of my favorite tires that I've ever driven on. It works so well in all driving conditions, and it just wears really well over time. The reason we're able to run basically no lift height out of this truck. This truck doesn't have a lift kit on it. It's all components, it's a suspension system. So when people ask how much lift you have on your vehicle, we don't have a number associated with that. So we wouldn't be able to say like, well, it's a 3-inch lift, because that's not very accurate. We have this truck set at 0 inches of lift, because the spring rates are set to hold the truck up off the ground in an appropriate height to support the weight of the truck. And the shock's job is to control that moving mass once it's going down the road. So the shock and the spring work in conjunction together, but we keep the adjusted height out of this truck as low as we can. So the tire size itself will naturally make the truck stand taller because it's a taller tire. The spring rates are what make the truck stand off of its bump stops. So it's supporting its weight as you see it sitting still. And so this truck is essentially sitting at 0 inches of lift. And to fit a large tire like this with very little preload in the suspension, we are running the ADV glass fender flares and bed sides, new front fenders and bed sides. Really love the lines of these fenders. They're very functional. When they install, it is fiberglass, so you see differences in the fiberglass and how they fit. But once we do the body work and we get them painted to match, they look so close to OEM, but has a very aggressive look to it, and I absolutely love these. You can see that it's all one piece under the headlight, and what we typically do is Line X to protect the paint itself from rock chips or anything like that. We Line X the molded fender flare here to where it kind of looks like a factory fender flare, and we build our own handmade inner fender liners, because this is now wider and it's a larger opening than stock, so the factory inner fender liner will not work. So we make these by hand out of ABS, and we mold them into shape in here, and we can push it way back. So that keeps rocks, mud, sand, debris, and everything else from flying up and hitting the inside of your fender and causing cracks or anything like that. So it's there to protect your fender as much as possible. These hand molded and handmade inner fender liners, unfortunately, are not something that we're able to make and send out in the mail, to where if somebody wanted to buy them, there's not any way for us to make these and send them out. There are so many fenders that fit differently. You can have the same exact fender from the same company and put it on 3 or 4 different trucks, and they're all going to fit slightly different. So there's no way we can do that, unfortunately. We get a lot of requests for that, And there are some companies that make some form of inner fender liner, but they are not a hand molded, hand shaped piece like this. All right guys, that does it for this walk around on the 21 Tundra TRD Pro Stage 3. Hopefully you were able to get something out of this one, and hopefully it was able to answer a few questions and you got to see something a little bit different, you know, running a full bull bar, but see how it ties in with a pretty aggressively wide fender. And you know, if you've got any other questions about this, please hit us up on our website, tavllc.com. You can follow us on Instagram at TAVLLC and Facebook, you know, Tactical Application Vehicles. If you've got any questions like this, you know, we carry a lot of other manufacturers. These things have just been a great build. They do take a while once they're here, but you know, we just thank everybody for their patience within the industry, and I can speak for so many vendors that we work with. Thank you everyone for your patience and for your business, and just bear with us and we will all get a truck built for you.